So I'm graduating college soon, and I've been thinking about moving back to Philadelphia, which, if you know me, you know that that's deeply ironic. Since middle school, I've dreamed of moving to New York City. It was like, the second I got a chance, I was heading straight there. It just always felt so right. But that didn't happen, and one terrible rejection later, I wound up in Philadelphia. I really hated it for like a month, maybe two, but then slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to like it. I no longer pined for the nothingness of the suburbs, and I stopped comparing my life to the lives of my friends in New York City. I loved the coffee shops, the museums, the thrift stores, and the Schuylkill. But I'm so stubborn. I'd spent the past year fighting Philadelphia. I didn't want to go, and I couldn't allow myself to like it or to truly open myself to it. So I didn't even realize all the ways in which I'd come to really enjoy interacting with the city. My heart was always in New York.
The next station is Newark Penn Station.
When leaving the train, please watch the gap.
I transferred schools and wound up in New York City. I thought finally things would get better for me. But they didn't. I was still depressed, I still closed myself off to everyone without even realizing, and my migraines became chronic and debilitating. I started feeling a little bit bitter all the time, that I was barely staying afloat while everyone around me seemed to be having the time of their lives, or could at least go out and enjoy themselves. And I was surprised at how much I missed Philadelphia, and the routines that I had, and the way that the city felt. When I made the decision to transfer, I knew I would miss it to some degree, but I never thought I'd feel any type of regret about leaving. I was pining for Philadelphia and all of its could-have-beens, and for the person I once was and the hope I once felt there. New York was supposed to be the city where I would come into my own and thrive. Instead, everything got a little bit worse, and the deep unsatisfaction I felt gnawing at my veins became even more consuming. I'm a very nostalgic person, which is something that I deeply resent about myself. I wish I could just let go of the past, but as much as I cling onto it, it clings back to me. No matter how mediocre my life is at any given moment, I move through my days with a keen awareness that I will miss this time in some way. In order to soothe my nostalgia as much as possible, I've become somewhat neurotic about documenting my life, creating a time capsule that allows me to relive the past as much as I can. There's a safety in the past compared to the uncertainty of the future. And when your future is unsteady and your present is lacking, you can't help but look behind you and think, why the hell did I leave? And would it have been better if I'd stayed? In the fall, I read a post on a Facebook group. Okay, wait, hear me out. It's pretty good. The poster had realized that she was bisexual and was struggling to decide if she should end her marriage in order to pursue a relationship with a woman. She was wondering if that desire would fade over time or if she would come to regret staying with her husband. One of the commenters wrote something that really resonated with me. I do want to say, I think the real question for you is, do you want it to fade? Adulthood is all about grieving the lives you won't get to live. It isn't for me to decide if your marriage is something you need to put on pause or reconsider, but I just wanted to tell you there's something to grieve either way. You might be grieving a life you never get to have with a woman, or you might end up in a place where you grieve a life you gave up with your husband. But in either scenario, there's a benefit too with the life you're getting to experience. So do you want this to fade? That's up to you. My desire to move back to Philadelphia is the latest manifestation of how I think about all the ways in which my life could have gone differently, a cacophony of what-ifs in my brain. What if I'd stayed in Philadelphia? What if I'd quit ballet in high school? What if I'd done a different style? Would that have made me a different person? What if I learned Spanish instead of French? Would I felt closer to my family? What if I went to a different high school? What if my parents stayed in Chicago and didn't move to New Jersey? What if I stayed in Philadelphia? All of this leaves an ache deep in my bones, and I don't think moving back to Philadelphia would soothe that ache. It honestly might just make things worse, because what I really want is to start all over again, to make up for all the time I spent as a ghost. But I'm not the person I was when I moved to Philadelphia, and I'm not the person I was when I left it either. And all those could-have-beens are gone, so I might as well just move on. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that rhyme. That was really corny. But in any case, looking at apartments on Trulia and fantasizing about a new life is a hell of a lot more fun than fixing your character flaws. I wrote that about 7 months ago, With my college experience rapidly coming to a close, I was trying to figure out what I wanted my future to look like instead of fixating on my past. The thought of moving back to Philadelphia was on my mind. I thought of exploring the city in the way that I'd wanted to as a freshman, but wasn't able to because of all my classes. I thought about going to all the museums and the parks that I missed, going to the one Trader Joe's on Market Street, blaming bad days on the SEPTA instead of the MTA. I thought of all the places that I'd left unexplored, all the people I could have gotten to know. I saw an infinite number of possible lives that I missed by leaving Philadelphia, and an infinite number I could gain by moving back. But I also saw that my nostalgia was making me miss an infinite number of possible lives right here, right now, in my little apartment on the Lower East Side. I'm learning that nostalgia can swallow you whole if you aren't careful, and for me, moving back to Philadelphia to chase a semblance of a shadowed past would simply be tumbling straight into its esophagus. I'm not gonna fall for that trap. But I will always carry the resilience that my stay in Philadelphia taught me. Whenever I'm overwhelmed with my dumb life, I think of the blizzards I trudged through, the 55-pound metal box I pushed uphill to do my cinematography homework, the long walks I went on, the countless last-minute dashes I made to 30th Street Station, and I think, surely if I overcame all those little things, I can get through whatever I've got going on right now. And if that sounds optimistic, I can assure you it's merely an aspect of reality that isn't depressing for once. I'll end with one of my favorite days in Philadelphia. The Eagles had just won the Super Bowl, and even if it weren't for all the crazy fans, the excitement in the air was so palpable it might as well have set the city on fire. I woke up early, as usual, then walked to Rittenhouse to my favorite coffee shop, which was an oasis of calm. Later, I went to Union Transfer, where I saw, very fittingly, Open Mike Eagle, one of my favorite artists.
Stormed at a business meeting, slip on mass banana peels. I should probably shut my stupid mouth, shirtless in a fur hat and a Vladimir.
I bought a t-shirt from him and told him that I loved his music in the cringiest way possible. I then took an Uber back to my dorm, which was much more cinematic than it sounds like. And maybe like those flickering lights we passed in the Spring Garden Tunnel, some things are simply meant to be left in the past.